The kitchen window was open just enough to let the late summer air drift in, carrying the smell of cut hay and something else, something sweeter, a woman's perfume. My husband did not wear perfume. I stood there with my hands in the dishwater, and I did not move for a long time. I just listened. There were two voices coming from the barn, his low and familiar, hers soft and laughing. And in that moment, with the soap suds going cold around my wrists, I understood three things at once. My husband was not alone. He had not been alone for a long time. And somehow, before this day was over, I would be the one apologizing. Before I tell you what happened next, what the bishop said when I walked into his kitchen with shaking hands, and how a 45-minute conversation rearranged my entire understanding of justice in the Amish world, let me introduce myself. My name is Martha, and this is Hannah the Amish Girl, the channel where I share the stories my community spent generations teaching us to swallow. If you want to hear the truth about Amish life from women who actually lived it, please subscribe and hit the like button. And in the comments, tell me this. Have you ever been told to apologize for something that was done to you? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your story too. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. I was 24 years old when this happened. I had been married to Jonas for 6 years. We had 3 children under the age of 5, a small dairy operation, 80 acres of corn, and a marriage that, from the outside, looked exactly the way an Amish marriage was supposed to look. He was a deacon's son. I was a minister's daughter. Our wedding had been the largest the district had seen in a decade. 340 guests, 12 celery stalks on every table. My mother had cried at the ceremony, not from sadness, but from pride, because in our world, a daughter married well meant a mother had raised her right, and here is what nobody outside our community understands. When you grow up Amish, you are taught from the time you can walk that the worst thing a woman can do is bring shame to her household. Not anger, not theft, not even disobedience to the ordning. Shame. Shame is the unforgivable currency of our world. Because shame is public, and the Amish community is built on the careful management of what is seen and what is hidden. So, when I stood at that kitchen window with the cold dishwater and the perfume drifting in from the barn, the first thought I had was not how could he. The first thought I had was what will people say? That tells you everything you need to know about how I had been raised. The woman in the barn was named Rachel. She was 19. She had been hired 3 months earlier to help with the canning and the children. Her family lived 2 districts over, and she had come to us because her father owed mine a favor going back 20 years. She was thin and pretty in the quiet way Amish girls are allowed to be pretty. Her prayer cap was always perfectly starched. Her dresses were a darker blue than mine, the way unmarried girls wore them. And she laughed at my husband's jokes in a way I had stopped laughing years ago, somewhere between the second baby and the 3rd miscarriage. I want to be honest with you, because honesty is the only thing I have left from that life. I had felt something was wrong for weeks. The way Jonas lingered at breakfast when she came in, the way his eyes followed her across the yard when he thought I was not watching, the way he started bathing more often, shaving more carefully, splashing on the bay rum cologne his brother had given him last Christmas, the bottle of which had sat untouched for nearly a year before suddenly becoming a daily ritual. I had told myself I was imagining it. That is what Amish wives do. We tell ourselves we are imagining it because the alternative is unthinkable, and unthinkable things are not allowed to be thought. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. I dried my hands slowly that afternoon. I untied my apron. I walked across the yard to the barn, the way you walk toward a snake you have already decided not to run from. The barn door was halfway open. I did not knock. I did not call out. I just stepped inside, and there in the tack room, with the harnesses hanging on the wall and the smell of leather and oats thick in the air, I saw my husband with his back against the wooden post, and Rachel pressed against him, her prayer cap askew. His hands where his hands had no business being. They saw me. They froze. Nobody spoke. I do not remember walking back to the house. I remember being in the kitchen again, my hand shaking so badly I could not pick up the kettle. I remember one of my children asking if I was sick. I remember saying, "Yes, go play." I remember sitting down at the table where I had served Jonas breakfast that very morning and putting my forehead against the wood and not crying. Not yet. Crying would come later when I was alone, when there was no one to see it. Amish women do not weep in front of our children. We do not weep in front of our husbands. We save our weeping for the dark, for the pillow, for the hours between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, when even God seems to be asleep. That night, Jonas came to bed late. He did not touch me. He did not speak. He turned his back to me, and within minutes, I heard his breathing slow into sleep, and I understood that he was not afraid. He was not ashamed. He was not even worried because he knew something I did not yet know. He knew how this would end. The next morning, I walked 3 miles to the bishop's house. I did not take the buggy because I did not want my mother-in-law, who lived in the Doughty house on our property, to see me leave. I walked in my second-best dress, the navy one, with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I had rehearsed what I would say 100 times in my head. I had imagined the bishop's face. I had imagined him calling Jonas in, demanding repentance, ordering a public confession at the next church Sunday. I had imagined justice. What I had not imagined was the kitchen, the bishop's wife pouring coffee, the bishop himself, a man I had known since I was a child, sitting across from me with his beard streaked grey and his hands folded on the oilcloth. The way he listened, nodding slowly, his face giving nothing away. The way he let me finish, every word, every detail, even the parts that made my voice crack and my face burn. And then the silence. A long, heavy silence, while the wood stove ticked and his wife pretended to be busy at the sink. And finally, his answer. "Martha," he said, "you must understand. A man's eye wanders. This is the curse of Adam. It is the burden every wife carries. The question is not what Jonas did. The question is what drove him to it." I did not understand it first. I thought I had misheard. I asked him to say it again. He did. And then he said more. He asked me when I had last welcomed my husband as a wife should. He asked me if I had been keeping the house properly. He asked me if I had been short with Jonas, distant, cold. He asked me if I had complained too often about being tired. He reminded me that I had 3 small children and a 4th pregnancy that had ended badly 6 months earlier, and he said, with what I am sure he believed was kindness, that grief in a wife can become a wall, and a man cannot live forever pressed against a wall. I sat there with my coffee going cold, and I felt something inside me break very quietly, not loudly, not with weeping, just a small clean snap, like a dry twig underfoot in the woods. He told me to go home. He told me to pray. He told me to examine my own heart for the ways I had failed as a wife. And then he told me, and I will never forget the gentle fatherly way he said it, that when I had done that examination, I should apologize to Jonas. Not for what I had seen, not for what I had felt, but for the conditions in our home that had made him vulnerable. The bishop said the word vulnerable about my husband, who had been pressing a 19-year-old girl against a barn post the day before. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. I want to pause here and tell you something important, because if you have never lived inside a closed religious community, this part is hard to understand. The bishop was not a cruel man. I do not believe he woke up that morning intending to harm me. In his mind, he was applying the theology he had been taught his entire life, the same theology I had been taught, the theology that said marriage is a hierarchy with the husband at the top, the wife beneath him, and harmony in the home is the wife's responsibility to maintain, regardless of what the husband does. He was, in his own understanding, helping me. He was teaching me how to save my marriage. He genuinely believed that if I went home and apologized, and tried harder, and prayed more, the storm would pass, and our family would be preserved. And in the Amish world, preserving the family is the highest good, higher than truth, higher than justice, higher, in the end, than the woman inside the family. I walked home those 3 miles, and I did not cry. I was past crying. I was somewhere colder than crying. I was in the place women go when they realize that the system they have trusted their whole lives does not see them as fully human. It sees them as the maintainers of the household, the bearers of children, the keepers of the peace, but not as people whose pain is, on its own, a reason for anything to change. My friend Sarah had told me once, years before, that her cousin in another district had caught her husband with a hired girl, and the bishop had ruled the same way. The cousin had apologized. The marriage had continued. The hired girl had been sent home, and within 2 years, the cousin had borne 2 more children, and the matter had never been spoken of again, not even between her and her own mother. I had heard that story at a quilting frolic, and I had thought, that is sad, but it must have been a hard situation. I had not understood then that it was the situation, that it was always the situation, that this was not an unfortunate exception, but the working order of the world I lived in. I went home, I made supper, I served Jonas his food, I put the children to bed, and that night, lying in the dark beside the man who had not even pretended to be sorry, I made a decision so quietly that even I almost did not hear it. I decided I would not apologize. I decided that whatever came next, whatever the cost, I would not stand in front of my husband and ask forgiveness for what he had done. I did not know yet that I would leave. That came later, almost a year later, after months of small refusals, of quiet resistance, of the bishop's increasing frustration with me, of Jonas's mother moving from sympathy to coldness to open hostility. I did not know yet that I would lose my children for a time, that the courts would be navigated, that my own mother would not speak my name for 2 years. I did not know any of that yet. All I knew that night in the dark was that something inside me had decided, and that decision was not going to be unmade. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. In therapy, years later, I learned a phrase that I had never heard before: institutional betrayal. My therapist explained it to me one afternoon when I was struggling to put words to what the bishop had done. She said, "Martha, when a person hurts you, that is one wound. When the system that is supposed to protect you sides with the person who hurt you and asks you to apologize for being hurt, that is a second wound, and the second wound often hurts longer than the first." I sat in her office and I wept the way I had not allowed myself to weep in that bishop's kitchen all those years before, because she was right. Jonas's betrayal had been a knife. The bishop's response had been the door locking behind me as I bled. I want to be careful here because I know some of you watching are still inside communities like the one I left. Some of you are Amish, some of you are Mennonite, some of you are in other high-control religious worlds where the same theology operates under different clothing. And I am not here to tell you what to do. I am not here to tell you to leave. Leaving cost me everything I had ever known, and I will not pretend that the cost was small or that everyone is in a position to pay it. What I am here to tell you is simply this: if something inside you has gone quiet and cold when the people in authority told you that your pain was your own fault, that quiet, cold thing inside you is not sin. It is not rebellion. It is not the devil. It is the part of you that knows the truth, and that part deserves to be listened to, even if you cannot act on it yet. The Amish world gave me real things. It gave me a childhood full of family. It gave me the ability to bake bread from scratch, sew a dress in an afternoon, deliver a calf in the middle of the night. It gave me a community that, when it was good in a way the English world rarely is. I am not here to tear that down. I am here to tell the truth about one specific thing, which is that a system built to preserve the family at all costs will, when forced to choose, sacrifice the woman every time. Not because the men in charge are monsters, but because the theology requires it, and they have been taught their entire lives that the theology is God. It is not God, it is a structure, and structures can be questioned, even when the people inside them cannot yet imagine the questioning. Jonas remarried within a year of our final separation. Rachel was not the woman he married. Rachel had been quietly sent back to her father's district within weeks of that day in the barn, and I never saw her again, though I have wondered about her many times in the years since. She was 19. She was in her own way also a victim of a system that had not given her tools to refuse a married man, 12 years her senior, who held authority over her in his household. I hope she found her way. I hope someone somewhere told her that what happened was not entirely her fault. The bishop certainly never did. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. If you grew up in a world where the people in power told you that your suffering was the price of someone else's salvation, I see you. If you have ever walked into a room expecting justice and walked out carrying the blame, I see you. If you have ever sat at a kitchen table with cold coffee in front of you while a man you trusted explained why your pain was, on careful examination, your own doing, I see you. You were not crazy. You were not too sensitive. You were not failing as a wife or a daughter or a member. You were telling the truth in a room that had been built to make truth-telling impossible. The bishop is still alive. He is still a bishop. He has by now counseled dozens of other women the way he counseled me. I do not hate him. Hatred takes more energy than I have to spare, and I have spent the years since I left building a life that does not have room for the weight of him. But I do think about him sometimes. On the long, quiet evenings when my own children are asleep upstairs in a house that I own, in a town that he has never visited, and I think about how much smaller his world is than he believes it to be, and how many women have walked out of his kitchen carrying a wound he does not know he gave them. Your pain is not the price of someone else's peace. Your silence is not the proof of your virtue, and no man, no bishop, no husband, no father, no community has the right to ask you to apologize for something that was done to you. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments what part stayed with you. Tell me your own story if you are ready to. And if you want to keep hearing from behind the prayer cap, subscribe to Hannah the Amish Girl. There is still so much I have not said. Until next time, choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.